Welcome back to the Pittsburgh Basketball Show. I'm your host, George Michalowski with Pittsburgh Sports Now, joined by a very special guest, a guy who I believe will be up there. I'm going to try to beat him this year, but I believe will be up there in terms of most games attended by anyone this college basketball season. Tristan Freeman of Busting Brackets. Saw he's doing some work for Hoops HQ as well. Tristan, thanks for joining me, man.
Yeah, appreciate you having me on, George. Nice to see each other more and more now that the season's back.
Yeah, and you just told me before this call that today is Christmas.
Yeah.
Today is Christmas for you, opening day of the college basketball season. How many games do you think you're going to watch today?
Ooh, well, because how schedule works out, there's a whole bunch in the afternoon, so I get to check out a whole bunch of them, and then got the local ones tonight. I'll be at Duquesne and Lipscomb, and then luckily for me, I'll be home in time to see the near midnight tip-off against Gonzaga Baylor. So this schedule worked out well for me. I can't complain.
So, Tristan, on this show, I mean, we like to cover Pitt, Duquesne, and RMU. I want to ask, I looked at the busting brackets. I believe Brian did these preseason rankings, the 1 through 364. I want to ask, so Pitt was ranked number 41, Duquesne number 140, and Robert Morris number 282. Now, Robert Morris seems to be a little bit right around where people project them in those rankings. Duquesne seems a little lower than I've seen them elsewhere, and Pitt seems about right at 41 consensus. Which of the three teams are you higher on than Brian, who you work with, and then like the national perspective here?
Yeah, I understand sort of the questions with Duquesne when you lose so much production. Obviously, Day Grant, Trey Clark is massive losses, but they did really well in the portal. They have a proven A10 guy, Maximus Edwards, who can start for them on day one. They have Trey Dinkins, who's a 15-point per game scorer at Canisius in the MAC. And I think obviously you have a new coach in Drew Joyce, but he's been a winner both at Duquesne and when he first started out at Cleveland State as an assistant. So I don't think the transition process will be as difficult for Duquesne. I do think they can be top 100 caliber. Can they be a top half team in the A10? That remains to be seen because I do think the league is a little bit underrated. But the Dukes, I think will be fairly impressive compared to what people might be lower than considering what they lost.
Who's a player in the city, Pitt, Duquesne, or RMU, that you're expecting a big season from that maybe, isn't a Jalen Lowe? Like, is someone that's not being talked about a lot?
Yeah, I'm interested in staying with Duquesne. You look at Kareem Rozier, who is someone who started out as a sophomore, and then he was benched as Jake DeMichael sort of rose up. But I think he's someone that can not only get back into his starting lineup, but can really be a breakout junior. He's a guy who is fairly efficient as a shooter. The question is, will he take those shots? He was just more of a defender and facilitator, but now that it's sort of wide open in terms of what the who needs to score for them. I think he's someone that can step up for them, and I wouldn't be surprised if he's, even if it's still not on high volume, be a 40% 3-point shooter because he's shown that he can shoot the ball. I think Duquesne's going to want him to do it even more, assuming that he is back in the starting lineup.
That team's got a lot of talent. I think it's a really deep roster. I think a similarity between last year's Duquesne group and this year's team is that Joyce, kind of like Dan brought last year, he's gonna have to find the ideal rotation, right? Like number one, obviously, you got to keep the kids happy. Number two, like they've got a lot of guys that are kind of that wing type build, and they could play the three, they could play the four. Like Matus, I was at practice the other day. Matus was hitting threes, and it seemed like a focal point of the scrimmages. Then you've got the transfers. Like they have a lot of talent. I'm excited to see Kareem. Also, they've got a lot of lefties. Something to watch out for this year. Duquesne has 3 or 4 lefties that are going to be in the rotation. So on to RMU. What can fans expect out of Andy Toole's group this year?
Yeah, I think that there's a lot of size and scoring on the perimeter. Obviously, you lose Josh Corbin, who was really in some ways their point guard last year as he sort of moved to being a facilitator. And obviously, everyone knows him for his to shoot him. But you bring in Cam Woods, who wasn't able to play much at NC State because he dealt with the transfer restriction stuff and wasn't able to get into rotation by the time he was eligible. But he was a really good scorer back at North Carolina A&T. And you know, you bring back Justice Williams, who had flashes in his first year with the program. That is a high major caliber backcourt in the Horizon League, and I think those two can be one of the better tandems in the league. And then you look at D2 transfer Josh Omajafo, who was this 20 point per game scorer again, 6'7" wing. He was a really good scorer, 3 level guy. He was arguably their most impressive player in the scrimmage against Villanova, and he's probably going to start for them on the wing, give them a legit score at that position. And I think RMU has a chance to surprise. There's not necessarily a lot of proven Horizon League talent, but at the same time, the conference lost stars everywhere. Outside of Northern Kentucky and Purdue Fort Wayne, everyone else lost their best players as well. So even though RMU is projected to be in the bottom tier again, the sort of the eighth, ninth place, I think that there's real potential for them to make the jump, assuming that the guards can be efficient, because that is something that both Williams and Woods have had issues with. They're both career under 40% shooters, and if they both do that in games, they're gonna lose a bit of them.
So RMU was picked ninth in the Horizon League preseason poll. I saw that spread against West Virginia tonight, like we talked about a bit earlier. West Virginia's 16.5 point favorites. If Tucker DeVries doesn't, catch fire, I think RMU could cover that spread. So I'll be watching that game. I know you will. Pitt picked seventh in the ACC. What did you think when you saw that prediction? I know they're using that as motivation again.
Yeah, you can make a case outside of Duke, UNC, that 3 through 11 can be anyone's guess. I think there's a lot of good depth in the ACC. There's a lot of teams that have potential and questions. I mean, focusing on Pitt, you're hopeful that the interior score with Cam Corrigan sort of balances out the offense or not too perimeter heavy. And they have solid players, with Damian Dunn coming over from Houston. He can be a double-digit scorer for them. I do think people wonder, does Pitt necessarily have the stars? Can Ish Leggett or Jalen Lowe be the best player on a top 5 ACC team? But they can defend, they can shoot the ball. They don't have any clear weaknesses. I think the question for them is, do they have strengths that can make them good enough to win 14, even 15 games in league play?
It'll be interesting, man. I think a lot of people last year, obviously Blake Hinson was the best player on a top 5 ACC team, but a lot of people last year thought Jalen Lowe was producing at a rate that looked better for the team than Bub Carrington. So I'm excited to see them play, man, and I know you are. Tristan, to wrap us up here, I want to ask you, how many games do you think you will attend in person this year?
Yeah, well, I have the privilege of being able to be credentialed for all 3 local men's teams, and all 3 of them play around 20 plus home games each. So, assuming I can get to all of them, because there's not too many scheduling conflicts, luckily for
Right.
me, should probably get around 60, and then hopefully I'll be able to attend some NCAA tournament games. So, hopefully between 60 and 70 is the goal for me again.
Got it, got it. So I mapped it out. I believe with the women's local teams as well, because I'm going to try to get to 5 to 10 for each team. Um, I think there are around 77 games that we could get to with no conflict. There are a couple like 11 a.m. and 7 p.m. days when we'll have to double up. But yeah, I'm looking to be at 60 to 70, potentially 80 games when you get up to that ACC tournament, NCAA tournament time of year. So it is going to be a busy few months for us too. I'm sure I'll talk to you in the next few days at one of these games, and have fun tonight at Duquesne.
Absolutely. Appreciate you having me on.
All right, Tristan, see you.